whispers in the deep dark night. Shadows dancing.
Welcome to the AI Riff, where we cut through the noise and break down the top AI stories of the week with real talk and real relevance. No hype, no fluff, just a vendor-agnostic take on what's actually shaping your world today. Whether you're in tech, lending, or just trying to make sense of the headlines, we're here to separate the wheat from the chaff and the facts from the fiction. Now let's get this started with your hosts, Mario Diabenedetto, Rob Katz, and me, Kyle Myers. We hope you enjoy this episode of the AI Riff.
Welcome to Studio 54. Oh, episode 54.
Studio. I'm not wearing my dance shoes.
Yeah, where's the disco ball? I mean, come on.
Can you imagine people paying to see us dance?
No. Well, actually, yes, we'd probably get more viewers.
It'd be the apocalypse.
There is room for comedy.
Yeah, comedy. Yes, purely comedy, nothing else.
Exactly.
Trust me.
Exactly.
So what are we going to talk about today, Mario?
Well, can we just welcome the fact that Michael Morehouse is once again joining us?
It's
like just because we had to start paying him because he's here so often, like you just skip right over him.
Yeah, I appreciate the dollar. Appreciate the dollar. That was great.
He's here so much. I just thought he's like one of the regulars. So
he kind of is. He kind of.
Well, I've been called irregular. I don't know what that means, but
well, Mr. Morehouse, it's always good to have you. So
that's always great to be here.
So yeah, this week, in a bit of what I think is a little bit of irony. So for those that haven't watched the first 53 episodes, and maybe are new to the AI Riff, we usually grab an article or two and riff off of it, right? Something very recent. It's always something that happened in the past week that we grab. It's been a lot of Substacks lately. And what's ironic is the Substack that we're going to take the article from this week is called Artificial Intelligence Made Simple. And it absolutely did not make artificial intelligence simple.
I read the wrong article then.
And in fact, I think we are going to dumb down this article. So I maybe apologize in advance to Devansh, who is the author on this Substack, because there's an incredible amount of detail in this article, and we might not hit a ton of it.
Okay. Yeah, my take at the end of this article was, I now understand why some engineers make $50 to $100 million a year, because this is a very, very, very complex problem that's being solved.
It's one of those humbling moments, right?
Yes, it is.
Where
can you make a topic so complex though that nobody really understands it, so it then elevates your intellect?
I can't.
I mean, it's like making up your own language.
Although
but
people,
anyway, I understand what you're saying, Robin. Yes, it's good that we have people that are like that. That are they're paid a lot of money, but man, they come out with some good stuff.
So the article name is a mouthful: "The 4 Secrets That Make GLM 5.2 Special, and What They Mean for the Future of AI." And I think we're going to mostly focus on that last part and what they mean for the future of AI, because I'm going to go out on a limb and say that the 4 things, which are deep-seek sparse attention, index share, multi-token prediction, and critic-based PPO via slime, are things that might not really come across in a podcast, although we can talk about them. The key here is that GLM is an open model, and its performance is starting to rival what we call the frontier models, the Anthropics, the Geminis, the OpenAIs, and it's open, right? It's effectively you run it on your own hardware. You can train it. I think even Rob, one of the things you shared was the idea that today we rent the AI because we just go out to the big frontier model and pay by the SIP. This is a model where you can get almost as good performance, and you can own the model. You can run it on your own equipment, in your cloud, in your own servers, or wherever you want. And that's pretty scary, right? People are basically saying this is kind of like the DeepSeek moment from, was it a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, whenever they shocked the world by doing this super cheap training?
Yeah. So let me I know the majority of the people listening to the pod here aren't engineers. So let's bring this into some context that some business folks may recognize. Flashback 20 years ago, you had Microsoft Windows and you had Linux. Microsoft Windows is a closed operating system. You license it from Microsoft. It runs on your PC. It makes your apps work. Linux was kind of the thing that was out there for the tech geeks, open source operating system. You ran it instead of Windows, but it was free and it was more accessible and manageable for maybe another parallel is like an Android phone compared to an iPhone. Like iPhone's a locked, closed environment. Android's a little bit more open and stuff like that. So you flash back 2 decades ago, and real business users were like, "I'm not going to use Linux. Like that's not ready for." Now you flash forward to today, Linux powers the internet. Linux is used everywhere. Linux is, Microsoft is still there, but there are businesses that are running their desktop computers on Linux now because it's friendly enough and good enough and powerful enough to do the job, and it's infinitely cheaper than Microsoft because it's free, right? It's open source. So back when, now let's just flash back a year ago, you had OpenAI and Anthropic and Gemini, these frontier closed systems that we were paying tons of money to access, and we most of us still are. And there's some open source large language model generative AI tools that were out there that were okay. Yeah, you get the novelty of running it on your own computers in your office, and you're not paying, but they're not nearly as good as what was coming out of from OpenAI and from the other frontier models. So what this story is highlighting now is they're good enough. I mean, just like Linux is now good enough to power all the servers that run the internet, these open weighted models are referred to as opposed to open source. These open weighted models, they're really good. Now, are they as good as OpenAI? Well, some of the benchmarks are better. Some of the benchmarks are close enough to be good enough. But that's the perspective we're talking about here is Windows to Linux. Well, now Linux is everywhere, so that's I just want to kind of level set for our business folks who don't know what GLM 5.2 even is.
Yes, or open models for that matter.
Yeah.
So is this just and I'm probably going to pronounce it wrong, Xifu or whatever it is. Are they they're the owners, just like OpenAI owns it, or are they the directors of it? If it's an open source, what is it? Their version of it?
Yeah, so there's multiple models. There's multiple global models. There are very few U.S.-centric models that are open. The disposition of Chinese-based models as a starter is often to be an open model. And their premise is that it's a commodity, that they're all going to keep rushing and one-upping one another, but it's still like they have a different mentality, which is to put it everywhere. It's kind of like the Android view. Like, I'm just going to make this available to everything and something's going to hit and people are going to go crazy and it's going to work. And that's caught on outside the US, right? This concept of open models has kind of expanded. I want to say that Mistral, which is French, is also open model. Here, there's not a lot that are high performance open models. The one that is not a great performer, but you might give some emphasis to is the fact that NVIDIA has their Nemotron model. And just because of NVIDIA's power, they might be able to turn it into something. But yeah, these are companies who, listen, Red Hat got bought by IBM. They were doing effectively open source, and they made a lot of money, right? There's a lot of money in implementing open source, and that's effectively the same model these guys are going for. So you're on mute. Yeah.
Sorry, I muted myself because there was a little bit of background fuzz. So I'm just curious on the smaller business, how do they get involved in this? Like, if I'm a small mortgage company, I'm sitting here, I can just click $20 a month. I got GPT, I'm good. Or I got to go open source. That means I got to put it on a server. I don't have a server farm anymore. It's all in the cloud. How do I do that? And I know how to do all that stuff, but most small businesses wouldn't.
Yeah, well, and I'll just throw a couple things out there because you could use something like OpenRouter, right? OpenRouter lets you point to all the different models, and you can just flip the switch and say go someplace else or whatever else. And OpenRouter, by the way, is what got hit really hard when this model came out because all the developers around the world were like, "Oh, I'm going to try that. It's cheap, it's free, it's whatever. But here's the thing. It ain't as cheap as you think it is. And Rob, a handful of episodes ago, you kind of just threw a number out. So for our own internal math, I was doing some checking on what it would take to run an open source model. A bare bones open source model on a single H100 chip, dedicated server that is has an H100 GPU, $5,000 a month. You want an actual cluster of H100 chips, which you're going to need if you're doing anything significant. It's $20,000 a month for a dedicated server. It ain't cheap to go open, right? Now you can use it by the drink and like you can do other things, but it ain't cheap. So your small business thing is real, Kyle. Like it's not like, every small lender is going to go stand up their own server in the cloud with an open model because it's going to make economic sense. It's like there's still an economic challenge with flipping over to these guys.
Yeah, and going back to Rob's, talking about Linux and Windows, I looked at this from a real simple perspective, and that is that, we don't host our own websites, we don't have our own data centers. So, out of this, I think is going to come a new business model where instead of let's just say that's $20,000 a month, there's going to be somebody that's going to build something. Let's call it mortgage related, and they will have a set of services that will integrate all of this. That's where all the it's going to happen outside of the business. Now you can probably have some dedicated. I'm not even sure it's going to be chips, but it's going to be dedicated. You'll have your own data sources. But I think that's, to me, what I looked at on this is that the term good enough, which Rob you used, for a lot of the stuff we're talking about, the simple insertion points. Something like going through your email. You really don't need something real powerful. There's a lot of the tasks that we're talking about. It could end up being scheduling. It could be all kinds of things.
Most of your writing, like most of the writing it does, like they're all good enough.
Yeah. Exactly. And so, what I look at is really there will be, I think, companies that are going to come out that will have this. They'll have this model along with some other ones. They may even aggregate other, some of the frontier models. Maybe you go to Myers AI orchestration, and not only do you end up getting this model, which is really set up for your company, but then you've got to deal with OpenAI or Chat or Claude, and you may get some scale there. So I think the opportunity here is for other businesses to come in and serve that middle market, which frankly I don't think anybody's got the expertise to engineer this stuff anyway. Even if they had the money, they don't have the expertise.
I think too, if you rewind 2 or 3 episodes ago, where we talked about the days of this practically free access to open AI, they're going to go away, right? The business models aren't sustainable. The cost per tokens are going to go up. So, we're all getting addicted to the drug, and the drug dealer's about to raise their prices. When that happens, just knowing that there's the opportunity to go to one of these other models that, yes, it's not free for the infrastructure hosting and everything, but the token usage becomes free because it's your own system, could become very, very attractive.
Well, yeah, for companies with high variable costs, being tokens definitely would be attractive. Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, and you can imagine it almost is better for somebody to provide this as a service to other people because you probably won't get 100% 24/7 usage.
That's right.
Of a dedicated model, right? So somebody who's actually doing this for you is going to have the economics better. And honestly, it's not clear to me that they won't just waterfall this, right?
Yeah.
And I think, Mike, you mentioned this before we started the episode today. The idea isn't whether the AI can do the job, it's can we put it in production? Can we get it integrated? Can we make sure the evals work? Can we make sure all the guardrails work? And it's like, if you can just do the evals and say, this is the right answer and this is the wrong answer, you could waterfall this whole thing. Start with an open model that's no token charge. If it doesn't hit the evals, you go to a more experienced model.
And by the way, having competition for the frontier models that are probably going to jack up their prices is going to constrain them from jacking up their prices so high that it becomes unaffordable, right? Because as soon as they do, then startups are going to spin up these, hey, we've got, the red hat of 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 these open weighted systems they're gonna start to emerge and become more and more attractive.
Yeah, and I think from the reality of what businesses do, they can get by on some of these cheaper models, lighter weight models on an ongoing basis. I think one of the bad things about going with the frontier models is that we've used horsepower to solve the problems versus structure and we'll call it a system. And so I think when I read this, I looked at it, I said, this makes all the sense in the world, because this is really bringing AI into sort of the computer systems world, where you've got validations, you're going to have security, you're going to have human in the loop or human in the lead. It's all, what we're really trying to do is take what we want done, but we don't need it done with all that horsepower. We may just need something to go through and sort my email. That's pretty cheap, and that's an incredible pickup in productivity for a company.
And there's people, I don't think this is a universal answer, but there's people suggesting that the small models, right? So almost every provider has small model versions, right? Which take up less memory, and they don't have the depth of understanding of the large models, but that these small dedicated models may be a large portion of what meets that need, right? That there's things where you need the generalist, but there's a lot of things where you just need the specialist, and the specialist can be compacted. Like it doesn't take as much as you think it does to make that specialist, right, really good. And so small model, like it may just be that there's going to be a lot more proliferation of these things. To be super geeky, it's almost like back in the day when we had web services, right? And the idea was I'm going to spin up a service for everything I have to do, and you're going to throw them all over, which became a little bit of chaos for people, but it did give people a lot of flexibility in how they constructed new software and things like that.
Well, to that point, Mario, the specialists are, okay, a general LLM like ChatGPT. It has the knowledge of the universe known by man in every language. That's a massive amount of content that it has to go through an algorithm and math and do all the stuff it does when you ask a silly question, and it's got to come up with the answer, right? A specialist model has an infinitely small segment of that universe of data. It is so much more powerful to have that specialist view, because it doesn't have to figure out what nodes to ignore. It doesn't even have the nodes that doesn't, that needs to. So, one of the things that this paper kind of concludes with is, the AGI is never going to happen. We're never going to have this, the Terminator, type of thing. But we're going to have a lot of specialized things that can do a lot of powerful stuff. So no one thing that knows everything, but these slivers of expertise are good. And then you're using a lot less power and fewer tokens and all the other negative stuff when you're working with a specialist type of solution.
Yeah, and if you think about having a specialist solution, then you can implement it from a business perspective. You say, I want to dip my toe in doing this, and then you can start going in and creating that sort of the insertion points all through the company. And I think to me, that's one of the bigger opportunities. It's going to give companies something that's really tangible, that they can see improvements, and then they can start layering it in wherever they need to.
Yeah.
I think it's, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that your point, Rob, about the specific taking up so much less time, really kind of, I was trying to think about how to formulate this idea, and I have it now, is that you've got this pie of people who are potential users of AI, and it's everybody in humanity, right? But you also have all the data that humans have access to. So, but if you're specialized, if you're trying to build faster, better, larger, win the race of AI, well, doesn't specializing, because once you in the specialty world, you kind of reach an apex, a law of diminishing returns, where it's not any faster than my eyes can blink, so I really don't really care how much faster it is. And if you've got all these segments of this pie that have got exactly what they need without having to go to the whole and having to absorb the whole at this astronomical level of energy and and speed and processor power and everything else, don't you take pressure off of the whole, saying you don't have to be that fast because I'm just going to go to the specialist? And I think that was the idea I thought AI was doing, that its fork in the road would go to the specialist in that topic, and then it would drill down on that topic. And maybe that's what their models do, but I don't know. I'm thinking it might actually make it easier for more people to get AI more quickly if you keep it specialized, and they can leverage it much easier than doing the whole thing, eating the whole pie.
So let me give you a real quick, real life example of that with ChatGPT is Codex. So Codex is if you're going to do software engineering coding, they don't want you to go to a ChatGPT general thing and go, hey, help me write code. They want you to use Codex, which is this the specialized wedge that they created just for that. And I think for that very purpose that you were talking about, Kyle, is it takes the pressure off of the main, the main knowledge. It's cheaper for them.
Yeah, like Claude Code, same thing. Yeah.
Well, and even inside the models, right? When you have it do research mode, right? That's really a special way of it behaving that says, I want to make sure I'm actually behaving like a researcher, and I want to, make sure that there's no lost links. I want to make sure I'm going super deep, that, whatever else. They're trying to do that, but still be a single unit interface today, right? These frontier models are trying to just give us the chat interface and say, but here you do everything else, right? And then when you make it as an agent, there's a lot of things out there that are mimicking exactly what we're saying, right? If you want to build an agent, do not build it broad. Make it as narrow as you can. The more narrow you make it, the easier the evals are, the easier the guardrails are, the easier it is to rev when you need to. Like it's just kind of fundamental. It's the way we probably all have seen software always developed. Take a big problem, break it down into smaller problems, solve each problem, bring back the solutions, and solidify what needs to happen when you've solidified all the solved all the individual problems.
So Mike, sorry, I have to interject. So Mike and I are partners on a company that we're building together. We should have done that. We should have taken this big problem and broken it down and taken it and we'd be further along.
So there's a lot of history and a lot of time spent. But one of the things that I think of is this whole idea that we're always trying to constrain our prompts. The prompt could end up being 18 lines of this is what I want you to do. We could have 40 of don't do this. Yeah. And so I think that's really one of the things when you look at it, it's about constraint. So by making it smaller, that is the constraint. We're making the world smaller that they operate in.
And to kind of just bring it a little bit full circle and give the article a little bit of credence, these 4 strategies that were used for this model, which is an open source model that is pretty darn competitive, are effectively, as you put it, Mike, a way that they've programmed in this specialization so that they can tune it to the point where, at least for the tests, and they show 8 different eval tests that it competes on, that it can compete. Well, that doesn't necessarily mean it solves anybody's problems, right? It just means it's these test beds, right? It doesn't mean if you try to use it in mortgage tomorrow that it can handle the complexity of the intertwined compliance and risk and business rules that go in there. Like there's nothing about any of these that really do any of that. This is all theoretical. And the truth is you have to go and figure it out for yourself, right? And find what actually works.
And I think that's where, we're talking about specialized models, but I think there's, going back to this idea of having a specialized business, there will be somebody that could come and use this model and say, I'm going to, it's going to be Myers AI orchestration. He sits down and he goes, look, I've figured this out. I've got these X amount of models. We'll, go out to frontier models for certain things, but they're going to be able to build that out. I still think that the biggest issue, if you're trying to do it on your own, is just trying to figure out what you want to do. Because, as Rob and I've gone through, is you have to pick something, go in, and you've got to go deep. So if you're going to build something like this, you're going to have to figure out, this is where I want to optimize my company for the next 3 months, and then after that, I'm going to go somewhere else. If a company puts this together like modules and says, look, here's the regulatory one. We're going to pull this data. We're going to cross check against everything. Maybe they do that. So I think the fact that you can do it there still has to be a way for businesses to use it, and I think is beyond most of them right now from a engineering and what do I want to do perspective.
And I'm not sure how much we want to go, but by the way, just over the last 2 weeks, Klarna is up 15%. Up 15% in the last, no, that's the last month, 30% in the last 2 weeks. It's still only at $20, but it still, I was just off by a little bit on my prediction.
So we're getting to the end of the dog walk time.
Yes.
I think we make an exception and push through and have this pod go a little longer than the typical and keep it on topic. And then, next one will be on a different topic. But
so let me just continue off on Mike's thought then. So if you're out there and you're actually doing some AI building yourself, right? And I don't mean really like lovable / Claude design where you're, vibe coding. It does apply, but it's not the same. Part of the lesson here is that engineering matters. Software engineering skills actually really still matter. Like, you've got to design, you've got to think, you've got to build frameworks around AI. It doesn't just magically do it all by itself. And maybe that's the key thing. Like, maybe you think you're going to fire your software development team. Well, don't fire your architect. At least keep that architect around.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and that's something we've experienced with just, wanting to build a deck, right? You can say, go build a deck. Okay. It's this square footage, it's this, and it'll build a deck for you. It'll show you all the dimensions. But there are so many ways you could build that deck you have to have the preference of the orchestrator, the Myers orchestration, where it would say, listen, we want it like this. We want it to look like this. We want it to do this at this height, at this corner, this material, this. You got all these things that you got to plug into it because it truly is. It knows how to build a deck. Any deck I want, it could tell me how to build it. But I got to tell it. I have to be an engineer. I have to engineer the deck with my words so that it can do it in the physical world.
So I want to kind of come back to the article too of what's the impact of this open source. All right. So again, 10,000 foot. There's an open source model that is very near and sometimes better than the foundational models when you look at a bunch of different benchmarks. And what impact is that going to have overall, right? One of the ways to think about it is if you're using a frontier model, you're using OpenAI or using Anthropic or something like that, you're basically renting the intelligence that they have. And even though I check the box that says, don't train your model with the stuff that I upload and keep it all private to me, we don't really know, right? We've seen evidence of companies that are stealing information that they shouldn't be stealing. If you run an open source on your own servers, or you're renting a server and it's running on that server, but it's your thing, you're owning the intelligence, right? The stuff that it's learning, the training that's going into it, it is giving you a competitive advantage if you're doing it right, competitive disadvantage if you're doing it wrong. But it's that own versus rent kind of mentality that makes open source attractive where, Mario, to your point, there's still a cost to rent the server space, right? But maybe it's worth it for a larger company to know that their stuff isn't commingling with the rest of the universe of information that is out there.
Can we pause right there? Because I got to believe that a bunch of listeners are fed up with software as a service where they can't get to their own data, right? And there's an element of that is analogous to what you just said, Rob, right? If you're renting your AI, then you really don't have control, right? Yeah. And you probably don't have the ability to have a super special sauce. Absolutely don't have much of a chance to create a moat. But if you have your own model, you at least have the opportunity to potentially do those things, right? To have control over what the differences are, to have control over how to build something special, to have control how to build a moat over what you're doing.
I mean, I'm going to put you on. Sorry, I'm going to put you on the spot for 1 second too. Is look, you have built AI agents that do stuff for commercial purposes, and you are beholden on the API layer that is exposed by those vendors to make your software work. And if they wake up one morning and come out with a release where they have changed their API and they didn't document it well and they didn't give you heads up, your product breaks.
Absolutely.
That's a risk, right? But
Yeah.
if you're building it off your own thing, you can control both sides of the equation. Hey, we're going to change this API, that type of thing, right? So
Yeah. One of the things, just maybe sort of dovetail on that, is there's so much ownership volatility right now in the AI space that's the other thing that you have to be able to hedge against, because once you make a lot of these changes, you're changing code. In a mortgage bank, it might be LOS, might be procedures. You may get rid of people. You may get rid of some engineers. You really have to have some sort of a path that's going to give you some continuity for, 24, 36 months. There's the price volatility, but there's just ownership. Somebody says, we've decided we're going to do this. Rob and I were just, it was a cursor that was bought by X.
yeah.
Yeah.
60
So,
billion.
that could be a really good thing, or it could be a really bad thing. You don't know.
Yeah, and let's just pause for a moment, because I did get a reminder today that we talk, a little bit flippantly sometimes about AI and the impact and everything else. And I do some outbound marketing, and somebody said, listen, I've had too many people around me lose their job because of AI. Like, I'm not really interested in helping you promote this stuff. And that is the reality, right? It is, as much as we see it as an opportunity and a builder and a great thing, there is a negative side to this, right? That just the dynamic, and I don't know if it's going to be persistent, but there's a dynamic where people are choosing to get rid of people and say, I'm going to replace you with AI.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a tough one, but you don't know the time frame on that. Eventually everyone's knowledge and abilities, like I'm at an age where I've got a lot of knowledge and abilities that I've done in the past, been there, done it. I know how to do things. And then if someone came in and told me AI can do all these things, great. It can probably do 75 to 80% of what I do. But there's some nuance to it that it won't do. And so I'm fearful in one stage of, AI could replace everything I do. But I'm also, you know what? It's going to take them too long, or they may not have the patience to get it right when I'm gone. And then how do they get someone like me back? Like if I'm on to a different task. So it's fear, but it's also coupled with bottom line. What if you're getting squoze? These mortgage companies are getting, their margins keep staying thin. You got to do something to save money. And
Am I wrong, or did we not kind of go through that with the internet? Like, there's a lot of new apps that were built on the internet, and it was because we could, and they were steps backwards. They were overly simplistic. They were like, 27 steps simpler than the complex stuff we had that was written for Windows or worse, COBOL or whatever. But it was part of the path to get to the more complex. And people were willing to relearn. And if ever there was an industry that is willing to drop everything it ever knew and start all over again, it's mortgage, right? this industry forgets more than it ever.
I would like to get a clean slate, but
Yeah. Well, there's also short memory. No, I think you bring up a really good point. And we mentioned earlier, hey, engineering is going to matter, right? So it goes beyond that, though, because the engineer is going to have to talk to somebody that's in the mortgage business as to, okay, I can build this, but what do I need to build? I think the insertion point for most companies is not doing the big, deep things that require a lot of brain power. In fact, I'm just reading some of the research and some of the articles that's not where AI is taken hold of in a lot of the large enterprise. It's really a lot of the mundane tasks, things that are repetitive, where you can actually get some traction. Companies are looking at it, and they're starting to evaluate, Kyle's really good at these things, so we need to keep him. Now your role is going to change, but I think that's where you're going to end up seeing people that have that third order level of knowledge. That's where they're going to become really valuable. I think the real question is, can you adapt quickly enough in this environment to make all that knowledge that you have valuable and fungible across the technology? And I think that's where a lot of people are going to struggle. is I know all of this. I just don't know how to translate it to how do I make it work. And I think that's that's what a company's going to have to be able to do, is they're going to have to figure out a way to take what Kyle knows, the new technology, and make it into something that really provides a lot more value.
So yeah, I agree, Mike. And I kind of put people into three different buckets right now. There are, or people should be thinking about three different buckets. If you are not technically savvy, you need to learn how to do prompt engineering. You need to learn how to use these tools to build in the constraints and the questions you're asking, to interact with it. You don't like what you got back from the first answer, you thought it was written poorly. Well, tell it what you want differently and let it correct it and get comfortable with that tool. I'm actually quite surprised at the number of intelligent people that I come across that are not really proficient at doing this yet. Like, you know how to use a word processor, you know how to use a spreadsheet, you got to figure out how to use this tool. So that's kind of body number one. And if you don't, you will lose your job to somebody who does. You're not going to be replaced by AI. You're going to be replaced by somebody who's more effective at the job because they're using a tool that they've been provided that you're choosing not to use. And there's this whole generation, I don't know if Gen Z, Gen X, and whatever, that's like they're so anti-AI that they're refusing to learn it because it's destroying the world and everything else. And I appreciate that sentiment. You will be unemployed.
Yeah.
Period.
Here's the shovel. I'm going to go get the ditch witch and dig the trench.
All right. So bucket number two is if you are technically savvy, then start to listen to what we've been saying in the past couple of podcasts and find a specialization niche. You can go figure out a product that fits into the new world order that's coming out around leveraging AI and getting AI in there. There is opportunity there and everybody's new at it. It's not like, oh, I've got 20 years experience doing this. No. 6 months. It's all the agents have been around for 6 months. So you're only 6 months behind if you haven't started doing it, right? And then the third bucket the third opportunity I would put people into is if you are in the technology, the IT technology side, so you're not a software engineer type of thing. We mentioned on a prior cast, and we mentioned it today, the orchestration layer. What's the governance and what are the tools we're going to use and how do we pick the right vendor? How do we make sure, like, the processes that businesses should be putting into place, and whether that's adopting an open weighted system that we're talking about in today's pod, or using other ones, or setting up waterfalls, all that other stuff. If you have the capability to learn how to be one of those orchestrators, I'm going to say again, you are not late to the game. This game just started. There's nobody that can walk in and go, I have 20 years experience setting up orchestration layers for a business using AI. You have 6 months, 3-month head start on somebody, right? So now I get it. If you're a funder at a mortgage banking shop, are you going to get skilled to be able to go do that third bucket? Probably not, right? You're probably coming out of the engineering IT world to be able to handle something like that. But gosh darn it, learn how to use ChatGPT. Really well, better than everybody else. Learn how to set up custom GPTs. Learn how to be the person at the company that displaces your coworkers. And God, I know that feels horrible and you don't want to do it and all that other stuff. It's either going to be you or you're going to be displaced, right? So, all right, I'll get off my soapbox.
No, Rob, I think you bring up a good point, because there are going to be people that have, we'll say, let's say middle of the road skills and knowledge. They're going to surpass people. Yeah. Because they're going to be able to leverage this. And I also think it's not just the engineering side, it's the ability to innovate and ideate very quickly. I mean, Rob and I have talked many times that even though we're making the decisions, the ability to look at something very quickly and go, this is good, this is not, it's not a matter of weeks. It's a matter of, in some cases, minutes. So you can find little parts of your job that you're going to be able to leverage this. It's like, how do I make a better decision about X? And figure out a way to do it.
Right. Yep. Or how do I consider 10 different ways to do this instead of just one that would have taken me 2 weeks or whatever?
I always go back to first principles thinking, which is, okay, I have all this data, it makes it hard to make a decision. Let's just break it down into something really simple. Let's go through it, create a process that I'm comfortable with, my knowledge base, and it's going to leverage what I have, but it's going to do it at a much faster cadence than it could before. And I do a fair amount of writing, and so I do all my writing. Had somebody that was having to review my things and give me a little bit of editing. They basically said, why don't you use these rules, and I'll take a look at it after the second or third pass. which made a lot of sense. I didn't have to wait a day. It literally, I write something, it comes back, and it, tells me how horrible it is, and then I fix it. So, but I think that's the thing, is it doesn't matter if you're technical or not. What you said, Rob, is learn how to use the prompts, learn how to do these things, figure out a part of your job that you're going to be able to leverage it. If you can do that, you're going to be a little bit ahead of people. I mean, it's going to be the Donner Party. You just have to decide which side of the equation you come out on.
So I'm a vegan. How would that work out?
Yeah. There's a long time ago at a mortgage company, the unofficial internal tagline for the executive team was "Weed our own."
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that's funny. I
But
guess
that-
I
but
wouldn't
that's-
be a
that's what's
vegan
gonna
if I were
happen.
in the Donner Party. I would probably quickly become carnivore.
lunch.
Yeah.
So,
Or lunch. Yeah.
an attempt at an exit question.
Okay.
Given the capability and cost combination of GLM 5.2 and the other things that are out there like it, I'll start with the simplistic. Is it going to affect the IPOs for Anthropic and OpenAI because their people are going to be, going to the cheaper stuff? And then longer term, is it going to really affect their trajectory? Like, are they going to continue building out all the data centers they're building out? Like, are they going to continue to just keep mass modeling, GPT 12.7 to the nth degree because that's, a never-ending cycle?
So going back to your original example, or I think Rob had it, was Windows and Linux, right? Who's the competition to Windows?
Apple.
Apple.
Apple, right? Mac. Anyone else? It was just two. So you've got three solid competitors and a fourth is coming in. I think there's enough players in this world disruptive change in technology that I think it's long term, it's going to hurt the value of one of whoever doesn't survive the social law of, what was it, the court of public appeal, court of public opinion. I think someone is going to fail there, and then just XAI, they focused on data centers, right? And that was good for them. And you don't hear them you don't hear about Grok that much. You hear it on college campuses and whatever. You don't hear about it though, like doing the heavy lifting. And I think there's so many competitors. I think having an open source one is going to get I think it's going to get lost, but it's going to be, I think the arena itself is what's going to keep everyone competitive and tight, because I don't think there was enough competitors to Microsoft Windows at the time. So I think that analogy that we used was good for that, but I don't think it's good for this. I think we got too many big boys in the pool.
I think from the IPO perspective, I think their business models, or the way they raised funds, I won't say who, but I think there's one company that's really vulnerable because they're so far from being profitable, where another one is actually close to it or showing profits of the top two. But I think if we look down the road and we think about what do they need, they're going to need revenue. They're going to need the ability to have a lot of people using AI. In an odd way, this may end up becoming the thing that actually helps drive their revenue, because now, instead of people dabbling in it at an enterprise level, you're now going to have it become literally thoroughly entrenched, because you have this, it's like middleware, right? It's sort of in there. It's going to be using it. It's going to higher utilization rates of AI. And I'm just projecting here, but maybe the first 2 years, the companies are going to get in, and it's going to be some very basic things that AI is used for. But as they become comfortable with it, they'll start going more to the frontier models, because they're going to go into deeper reasoning. They're going to go deeper into their work. So this could end up being a really good thing for them, because they will now have, everybody will be using AI, because right now a lot of companies really aren't, not at an enterprise level. So if they can facilitate this, this could be helpful for those big frontier models.
So I'm going to do my disclosure. I have money in both Anthropic and OpenAI. I sure hope their IPO is an amazingly big success, and then I can cash out, and then they can crash and burn. So I hope it doesn't. I do hope it doesn't hurt the IPO. Here's what I think is going to happen. I think let's come back to the Windows Linux, and Kyle, not the perfect analogy, but good enough at this point. Is it took 20 years for Linux to get to where they got to. I'm making up that number. It's not an overnight thing. I think for the next, look, we are in the infancy of AI. We've only been using it mass market for about 2 years. It's so much better today than it was 6 months ago. 6 months ago was so much better than 6 months before that, right? The specialty wedges that we've been talking about are just coming into play now. The agent is in infancy, right? Agents and spinning up agents and orchestration. We are so early into this thing that I think that the foundational models in those companies, first of all, they're not stupid. They're coming out with their wedges, right? They got their codecs, they got their Claude code. There's going to be other wedges. Microsoft is working on an all healthcare one, I think. There's the wedges are being developed by these companies that have incredible resources to go develop them. The open source stuff is interesting, and there's going to be hobbyists that get into it, and there's going to be companies that think they're front runners that get into it and so forth, but it's going to take years before the adoption rate of open source is meaningful enough that the big foundation models feel the impact of them. And then they will feel the impact of them. But by then, we will either solved our energy problem, or we will have cratered the earth and it won't matter anymore. We will have solved our heat dissipation water problem, right? Like there's so many problems over the next 20 years that AI is going to introduce that need to be worked out. So there's too many moving pieces to sit there and say that this GLM model is going to impact the IPO. I don't think so. Is it going to impact their stock price afterwards? I don't think for 10 or 15 or 20 years, or maybe it's 5 to 10 years, some window that's going to take place there. But we also can't sit back and think that the foundation models are just going to keep trying to improve their generic LLMs. They've got other things that they're going to come out with and other things they're going to specialize in. These are not stupid people that are running these companies. There's a lot of money behind them that are helping to influence the decisions that are being made. Having said all that, everybody's prices have to go up because it's all non-sustainable, right?
Yeah.
As we've talked about. So,
but to kind of, so if Microsoft has their healthcare, Copilot has its healthcare wedge of the business, does that mean that Anthropic and OpenAI and Gemini and X, that they don't go after healthcare? That
they will.
So I guess that's the point I'm making, is there's so many competitors and there just weren't that many to Microsoft. There weren't that many pick the cell phone carriers. How many of the cell phone carriers, when we first got cell phones, are no longer with us? Like, not that they're going to go away. I don't think that these Anthropics and OpenAI and them, they're going to go away. I just think their relevance will be, they'll accept the smaller market share, and that's what they're going to be based their valuations on. Because I just think there's going to be a true winner in the next couple of years. The next year, there'll be a true winner, or at least first, second, and it's the rest are going to be also rans, and it's just not going to.
Yeah,
we're talking about these wedges, but we talk about healthcare, but that's very broad. But is Anthropic or OpenAI going to go after the plumbing wedge, or the dry cleaning wedge, and all of that? So I think this is where this type of model could end up being in there. Is that there's going to be, for the vast majority of the businesses, I don't think that anybody can come in and say, look, here's these 18 wedges that covers everybody, however we want to call that. I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity in there and we'll just talk about it, enterprise or small business or medium-sized business for wedges. And if you look at them now, if you've used Claude Design, it's brilliant. I have to tell you, it's absolutely brilliant. And that's an area that they've picked that they're going to go after. OpenAI is really not that good there. Gemini, not that good. So I think they're going to all pick some wedges that their models work with today. But there's still a lot of things that have to be filled in. I mean, we're talking thousands of business types that would have to run through these. So I think there's still going to be room for something like this, whether maybe it's a subset of the frontier models. But somebody's got to do all that work to get those specific industry solutions put together.
But I will see Rob's
Mario,
point that the open technology, the open architecture, is probably years away from being anything that's going to be an option if it ever really becomes it's more going to be nichey. And I think, but it does open up the idea that I could do it myself. And that's always such a great idea until you start paying the bills to do it yourself or get behind on a version, and then you're stuck, and then you got to do your own maintenance, and it's no fun.
All right, Mario, what's your answer?
So the answer is you're all wrong. It was a trick question. The economics are actually fictitious. And I can't prove this, but I do believe that it's actually no cheaper to run the open source model today than it is to run the frontier model because of the chip economics today. And unless the chip economics change and what it costs to run any model, or somebody comes up with an incredibly efficient model that can run on, regular chips, I don't think it matters. And I think yes, there's going to be fallout, Kyle. You were right there for sure. But I think today, I don't think it's going to actually. I think it's fiction that people are all going to switch over to open source models tomorrow. I think that's.
I agree with that. I agree with that.
Mario, is it chip economics or what I'll just call token usage? In other words, if I do something that's very narrow on a particular model, which let's say that I can get it down to where it's extremely narrow on a particular model, it's really about token usage, isn't it?
It can be. It can be. We talked about just in one of the prior episodes just recently about the idea of, making your token usage more efficient. And there's an upside to that. It's not something a lot of people pay attention to today, but effectively, yes, because whether you like it or not, most of the models are running on the same GPUs. Mm-hmm. Whether it's open source and they've got to keep running the GPUs, or they're charging you by the token because it's going to crank through GPUs, they're charging you on the economics of the horsepower that's being done to make the horse run.
Yeah. I mean, and cheaper by the keg, right? You want to have a beer, you go down to a local place, you spend a little more for a beer, but you don't get a keg fridge and have a keg in your house and sit there and just drink a beer when you want. People do, but it's that you got to love beer to do that. So you got to love open source, build your own stuff to be able to do that. But I'd rather just use the models I'm with now, with Claude and ChatGPT, and just pay to play while it's still cheap.
Have we walked the dog around the block 3 times? Dog's whining.
My dog is
dog
and looking at me like
Rob is carrying the dog at this point.
No, this is the scene from Vacation where they got the chain, and the dog probably kept up with you for about a quarter mile. And the
really
chain
tried.
is rattling off the bumper. Well, on that note, lovely reference to Chevy Chase. I'm Kyle Myers.
I'm Rob Katz.
I'm Mike Morehouse.
And I'm still Mario DiBenedetto.
And this has been the AI Riff.
Wires hum like whispers in the deep dark night. Shadows dancing strange under neon light. Digits spinning fast like a gambler's hand. The clock chimes change, it's the new command. Oh, the future calls with a voice so clear. A melody of progress in every ear. No turning back, the wheels in motion. A tide of cold like the endless ocean. Binary prophets riding fading streams. Data flows like rivers fueling all our dreams. the beat of change we sing. Every click and hum a key that rings. A revolution, quiet, but it's vast. Building empires where echoes of futures cast. Oh, the future calls with a voice so clear. A melody of progress in every ear. No turning back, the wheels in motion. A tide of code like the endless ocean.